Hello, and welcome to Stress Less Tips and Tricks for Managing and Reducing Stress. My name's Beth Pollock, and I'll be exploring and hopefully help you explore what we can do. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, COVID, as your front-facing people in the state of Indiana, helping citizens who are going under a lot of stress, just as your households are. So as we go along, grab a pencil and pen, maybe some Post-its, maybe screenshot with your cell phone the content so you can pick out what you think will work best for you. Even better, share this information with your household members, your colleagues, or friends so you can really remember it. And let's look about the facts of stress. I think it really helps to remind ourselves that we'll talk about the biology, the systems, that exist in our body. We're at a fabulous time that we know more. We've learned more about our systems as time has rolled around through the technology like fMRIs and measuring our blood flow and things like that. And yet many of the practices that are going to help us, we're going to be part of our toolkit tips, have been around for ages. They're free, and people have written about them, from ancient philosophers to hundreds of years ago, people like Thoreau and Whitman. And so we have both expressions that describe what's going on in our body, and we also have plenty of wise people throughout the centuries who've told us what to do so we can live better and live healthier. We can measure it now, and that's the exciting thing. So all stress impacts us, big, small, and certainly when we're looking at COVID and the adjustments, the changes, the vigilance we've had to do to protect ourselves, our children, our elders. We know we've had what's called a heavy cognitive load. Only 1/6 of our brain, the front part, which takes until about 25 to develop, is capable of doing this heavy lifting. And we'll see shortly how much the automated systems go along, shoot things out, make us react rather than act. And so what I'm asking you to do is I ask you to commit to some factors, some practices, is to commit to practicing them. So let someone know as we go along that you're going to really do something, to really commit to stress, and perhaps be a model to your children, to your partners, to your co-workers. So we certainly know that technology, which is so disruptive of sleep, the lack of what could be called agency, independence. It used to be air traffic controllers were some of the most stressed people because the planes are coming. There's a high level of responsibility, and they couldn't control the planes coming. So there was heavy, serious workload, and sometimes not a lot of things they could do when works go wrong or a plane entered a flight space. All of us, because we are reacting to particularly email, text, social media, chat features, perhaps, we have such a hectic life. Cal Newport, Newport, talks about email. And so I encourage you to look him. And by the way, throughout, I'll be giving you resources, books, people to explore, explore your particular situation now, and perhaps reflect on the wisdom of these people. So certainly we know that stress affects our body. We used to think above our neck, the mind, that was one thing, and below the body was something else. And we know they're connected. We have a vagus nerve that connects to our gut. More about that later. And it will be very clear to you when we're done with the sort of biology piece, why we have health situations and why it's so important for us to be proactive, protective, and practice stress for all our health, including not only our emotional health, but our physical health and the health of our careers and communities. They all fit together. So wherever you're going to start working on your stress management, stress practices, know that any beginning is terrific. and you can build skill as you go along, just as you would building skill with anything else in your life. So I think we could write, what is the research? Certainly COVID is a stressor. As I said, we've had challenges with our children learning. Are they going to school? Are they not? Mask wearing, being vigilant of being 6 feet apart, being unable to see our elders or parents. Maybe last year you didn't have a family reunion or vacation that was planned. This year you did it. You may have to COVID test and do all sorts of things to be able to, as one friend did, travel to Hawaii with her grandchildren and children and their spouses. And that was a whole lot of control and not knowing whether everybody would be healthy enough to come along. We can have stressors like that. Or maybe you are one of the people who are really worried about the Delta variant, have family somewhere where it's stronger. I'm in suburban New York, so clearly New York City gets the opportunity to have virus variants much faster because of its size and transportation and impact of people coming in and out of the city for any number of reasons. And so I have concerns. I've got to measure my own, regulate my own stress, and share with everyone in my family. Are we going to have a family reunion in Ohio? What's that going to look like? And if someone's not vaccinated, will they be invited? So we can have stressors and conflicts about that. Certainly if you're in elder care, so family is enormously complicated. And lots of these stressors intersect, they overlap. So if I'm dealing with elder care issues right now, I can't get to mom. Do I move mom closer to me? Is there a facility? Perhaps it's more expensive. Does she have the money? Do I know about her resources and elder care issues? Can I find her doctors and things like that? Do I move closer to her? Are grandparents healthy enough, fit enough to help children with their homework or help you as childcare? Certainly our finances have been challenged. A statistic from Pew Research that just amazes me, even though it resonates personally, is that 52%, that's 5-2, over half of the adults 18 to 29 in this country have lived at home during COVID, the most since the Great Depression. And clearly that I'm in the cohort. I had a 29-year-old leave New York City and live at home for 10 months. Great and glorious and an opportunity in some experiences. So a happy stress, but also a stress of space, finance, bandwidth, literally bandwidth. So I had to drill holes through the wall to get Ethernet cable so we could have enough Wi-Fi. And I worked from a coat closet for 10 months in order to record webinars like this. So all that change, and we, as a species, we might like novelty. Change, it for most of us is pretty hard. So our relationships, having an extra adult or maybe a handful, maybe you have a 28-year-old with children and a spouse who moved to your home. So that definitely has impacts on electricity, food, space. We've been negotiating all of this and the stressors and figuring it out. And if there are relationships, perhaps there's been codependence or abuse, or we've certainly seen an increase in alcoholism and drug addiction during this time, domestic abuse. We may have other challenges and not be doing the self-care that we need, or not even have access to the programs or know how to in this time. By the way, I'm going to remind you that EAP can help you with any of those things. But these old frictions, conflicts, silences can stress us out if we really like harmony and don't want conflict. Certainly, it's really interesting. I'll give you an insight ahead of what's coming up with our body and our endocrine system. We tend to eat salt, fatty, and sweet, don't we? Or we might lose our appetite, so not eat well, drink and fill our bellies up with alcohol, which sort of quenches some thirst, but then not drink enough water to be healthy. Certainly, what news is coming to us, what our household members share with us as news or media. We can compare ourselves with others with or without COVID through social media, TikTok to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and anything else that you might use. And so we get a really distorted view of other people's lives. And yet, I think a COVID strategy or stressor right now is that under non-pandemic situations, we find that we might be really stressed out and having some challenges, but our best friends are in a good place, and our spouse is in a good place, or our kids, and so we it's more like whack-a-mole. We take turns being under this a stressor. And now, as I connect with friends from Norway to Singapore and all over the United States and Mexico, we're all facing this stress, and what we're allowed to do, vaccinations, how school has changed elder care issues, and we're all in it together. We'll talk about how friends can support us even though they may be in as challenging a situation, and how helpful that can be for stress management, stress reduction. Absolutely, sleep is can be really compromised. We know how to have sleep hygiene, good sleep hygiene. It's important to us, yet we may be binging and being on our laptops so much, or smartphones when we get into bed at the end of the day, that we're messing up our melatonin, and we're not getting the cues, we're not getting outside enough. Perhaps exercise, of course, is important as well, and we're not moving our body or being out in green in nature enough to let our body respond to melatonin and get the normal cues for sleep. So all of this is part of now. So we're going to look at, how do you know when you are stressed? Our objective here is to identify it. So for you to touch base with your mind and body. Some of us really know our thinking, yet we'll see how our body reacts or can respond to situations. But just take note now, start before I start telling you so much, how your body reacts to stress. How do you know? Or do others in your household know that you're stressed before you do, because they've observed behaviors and know you well enough to say, hey, are you okay? Or let's go take a walk. We can be protective of others in our household, particularly our children, and say, hey, let's go shoot some hoops and help them that way. So let's think about that as well. Here we have this fabulous system. So there's the brain, kind of wrinkly over there. There's a stress or stressor. Now there's good stress, bad stress. Up here in the right corner, we have distress and eustress. It's not managing our stress on a regular basis that is really a challenge to us. If we were going to, or we're scared, we're in a bad situation, maybe we're in a parking lot and we're not comfortable, and like all those TV cop shows and things like that, we got to run away, get away from someone. It would be great that this system is working. All right, so this system would work. We'd get a stressor, a signal, and our body would say it's time to fight, flight, or freeze. And then what happens? What happens is we might poo in our pants, have diarrhea, we might throw up. Our blood flow stops going to our digestion, which is why that happens. Adrenaline goes into our mouth, makes our saliva taste like metal. Our heart starts racing. We get hot. The blood flows go into our arms and legs. We feel that pounding heart, and we're ready to fight, flight, or freeze. That's really good if we're being chased, if there's a bear and we're in some national park, or in our backyard, maybe somewhere in Indiana. However, if we're living that way repeatedly because we're staying really angry and we have unresolved issues with others, or our vigilance over COVID is so overwhelming, we're anxious all the time, or just we've had trauma in our past experience and it's been unresolved, untreated, we're going to have these experiences happen again and again. You could think of it as if you burn yourself and on the oven and that skin that's new is really sensitive, we're going to be really sensitive to life experiences. So a few people I want to mention now that have done research in this area. One is John Kabat-Zinn. So that's Kabat hyphen Zinn, Zinn. Really, you can see him on YouTube, and also he has plenty of books. Another one who's got a really outstanding book on trauma is Bessel van der Kolk. That's The Body Keeps the Score. Once again, The Body Keeps the Score. And his work is interesting because he speaks to how the mind, the 1/6 that does the heavy lifting, that takes until we're in our early 20s to develop, versus our limbic system. We have these two systems. The limbic, the emotional system, operates more swiftly than our prefrontal cortex system. That's what we see with teenagers. They know something is dangerous, but they do that dangerous thing. The theory is that the emotional system makes the decision first, rather than the analytical, the knowing situation. So they do, even though they know otherwise. We could do the same thing when we're dysregulated by stress. And so certainly people who have experienced trauma are sensitized. We could talk about it as triggers, but we all have different sensitization and different processing. We're born with temperament, and our temperament stays relatively stable through the course of our lifetime. That could be things like introversion, extroversion. Are we sensitive to things? Are we eager to explore things like that? And that stays relatively stable. I've already explain some things, whether it's trauma or happy experiences. We have models from our parents. Our mirror neurons have picked up from our caretakers and our environment, how to process stress. So are we going to get angry and kick and scream and slam doors? Is that our normal normal way to process humor? Are we going to stuff it down and lock up our muscles, our psoas muscle that's around our gut, and close things down? For those who I've been looking at, I got to make my nutrition better. It's really helpful to understand that stress eating, that adrenaline taste in your mouth, adrenaline that happened because I was trying to protect you during your fight, flight, or freeze. Oh, by the way, it's a little almond-sized thing, the amygdala, that makes stress, all this trigger. Well, guess what? Adrenaline tastes like metal. And so it actually makes sense that if we want to get rid of that bad taste in our mouth, we have that expression, right? Something leaves a bad taste in our mouth, or an experience. That's makes sense. Then I'm going to eat salty, fat, sweet, or maybe caramel chocolate covered pretzels to have all of them together to get rid of that bad taste in my mouth. Or alternatively, I think it makes a lot of sense that we decide, or we our body decides, we lose our appetite. Certainly, I've seen this in family members who do have experience and have experienced panic attacks, or might be needing to regulate anger, that they either stress eat or they lose their appetite. When I reflected them, that was your body. You were so mad yesterday that they had stressed themselves out. So it goes throughout our body. Another thing to be aware of, as we're looking from the brain here down to the adrenal gland, that we have something called the vagus nerve going from our brain to our gut. So when we say that expression, we have that gut feeling, we're not feeling good, that is really a stressor warning. Say you don't trust someone, you are in that parking lot, it's late at night, your hands are full and it's just too quiet, you're not comfortable, or things like that, walking down an alley. Your gut feeling is your spider sense, your radar, your really primitive sense is saying, take care, take warning. What we need to be aware of, though, when we're talking about stress is that as humans with this prefrontal cortex, we can think of things, we can remember things, and our body will experience those things as if they are happening in real time. So if I am thinking of an argument I had, if I'm dreading, say, going to the family reunion and arguing with a family member, or if I'm uh, projecting ahead what's going to happen, and starting writing the script of the fight I'm going to have with my mother-in-law, we can make our body, even though we're not in that real experience, think of a trigger. So the trigger can be an actual experience, or the trigger can come from our thoughts. So here's where we can practice, and we'll get to the toolkits very shortly. So I said the endocrine system starts firing and working, and our body is ready for action. Digestion's not important. We're going to get rid of digestive activities, and our heart is going to work faster. Our muscles are going to tighten. We're going to be ready to run like the body picture there. And that, once again, could be really good if we need to lift a car off of someone or child and do something heroic like that. This system really does give us superpowers. Our blood pressure is going to raise. I think this is one thing we can, both our heart rate and our blood pressure, we can see that those people who have unregulated stress, and maybe have poor eating habits that are contributing to the high blood pressure type thing, what we do find is that people have poor heart rate variability. Certainly in the body keeps a score. They talk about that quite a bit. So if we are under stress, our heart rate is ready for action, right? It starts going faster, faster, faster. It should come down and relax once we realize we're safe, we're okay. What we find is that people who have experienced trauma or have challenges regulating their stress, managing stress, that their heart rate goes to a peak and then has a really hard time settling down to a healthy resting heart rate. And so we want our heart rate to get back to normal as swiftly as possible. Another book that talks about this stuff regarding burnout, which may be something that you feel like you're experiencing, is the Nagoski sisters, Nagowski. Their book on burnout talks about how bodies, even the animal kingdom, processes these adrenaline surges. And so our breath quickens, our senses sharpening. Someone I know who really struggles with anxiety, I can know when that individual is not well, because I hear things, or I'm asked, do you smell that? No, I don't smell things. Sense is really sharpened. We may see that they start scanning the room, the vigilance. I'm being wary. So what I call mouse eyes, scanning the room. It's really important to understand that under stress, we lose our ability to have peripheral vision. We're focusing on running away. So focusing on running away from whatever trigger, or hiding, making ourselves as small as possible. Our ears work really high. So when, as far as our eyes, we lose our sense of peripheral vision. That also means one sense dulls. That's proprioception, understanding where we are in space. So if you experience yourself or someone you love having a lot of clumsy, spilling the coffee, and I'm not talking about a child who's learning to master these tasks, but you knock over the coffee, you drop your pen a million times, you can't open up a safety pin, something like that. You just knock into a wall or trip, that proprioception lessens because you don't have peripheral vision, and you're really enervated. Your body is really focused on other things. What should I do next? So it may not be focusing on what you really need to do right now. So it shows how bad multitasking can be for some of us. Certainly touch, we might startle someone if we come in, and even we're just trying to affectionately touch someone on the shoulder, someone may startle, and you scared me. because they are so focused. They've lost their peripheral vision. They're not having that ability to sort of hear and take in the environment that you've walked up behind them. So all those senses get innervated under the duress of stress. So good stress, bad stress, and there's a lot of gray stress in between, and what we're here to do is, and we're really about to start how you can practice so you can get that emotional system. It may start working, you can inhibit it, or you can also experience the world. So those vigilant, anxious thoughts and behaviors are not so present in your life, and your body's not working so hard. Once again, you will have EAP to help you. So maybe you need some help with that, or some other situations that you'll see at the end that EAP can help you with. So good stress, the only time we are completely stressed or stress-free is when we're deceased, because stress is a survival system. Animals experience stress. We certainly know that through experience and observation. And so these systems do keep us safe. My gut feeling may prevent me from trusting someone with my money, or being in a relationship with them. That's a good thing. So I am going to pay attention more clearly. It helps us get things done because it is really focusing. Some of us are perfectionists and procrastinators. You could be both. Frequently that is true, or maybe you're just a perfectionist. The adrenaline and cortisol, that focusing capabilities that we get through our systems. If you're someone who's over 35 and never had an evaluation to see whether you're ADD or things like that, you may not know that you have become a habitual procrastinator because you get these surges, these automatic adrenal system focusing you, which you might have otherwise taken Ritalin, which is a stimulant to help focus you, as an alternative if you had been assessed. So do know that, knowing if you've always been that person who sort of has been stressed because you've just had to work extra hard at focusing to get your work done, and maybe going back to the workplace now is an aspect you're not looking forward to, maybe think about getting an evaluation so that you could see whether some of your stress and ways you've always been told you're lazy and things like that really may be because your neural system and your neural wiring. ADD, ADHD, I'm a special education advocate, looks very different in women than men, and we are learning more about it. So bad stress, we're too stressed. It lowers your immune system. I said all those impacts. Why would we want one of our most important muscles, the heart, to have to work harder than it needs to? Or expose our biggest organ, our skin, to injury, scalding, bruises, things like that, because we don't know where we are in space. So these are things that we don't want to have chronic stress. And certainly, we look at the stress, we might get sad, frustrated, be afraid. And some of us turn those three emotions, or a combination of them, into anger, and then we project it on other people. And we become really unpleasant to be around, and really untrustworthy. So we can really corrode and erode relationships if our stress isn't regulated. So it's important for you to have the skills yourself. If you're a parent, we do know, it's been said since early on in the pandemic by Dr. Alan Kasdan of the Yale Child Study Center, that we really need to be aware of parents, that one of our most important priorities now is to help our children go through this period of history with the least stress possible. So that way they maintain and continue to develop their prefrontal cortex, and they have the ability to learn, and the most ability to learn. We certainly know stressors are distractors and inhibit the ability to learn and acquire knowledge. So we obviously can't turn to our neighbor. I can turn to the wall. But I want you to take those Post-its or pen and paper you have and think about what your personal stressors are. You can hit pause on the recording while you think about it. And think about what it could be your pet peeves, what triggers you, and it may be someone has told you, wow, this happens, and Sunday nights are really awful for you. And it realize it's the thinking going back to the workplace or something like that triggers you. Could be we have lesser triggers. Please and thank you are mine. I really expect people to say please and thank you to me, and sometimes I get too upset about that. Could be your boss not appreciating how hard you are working, or just the frustrations of an undiagnosed learning disability. Why is it so hard for me to do certain things? Could be noise, could be interruptions of your sleep. Just think of all the triggers you can have. Hit pause while you think of them and just take note. So, to be diagnostic about yourself, you have your own list of what are triggers. We can, once again, this is not, we don't only have inner and outer stresses. You'll see there's crossovers because we are a system. Our households are a system. Our mind and body is a system. So the stresses can really overlap here. Ancient wisdom, there's the poem Desiderata that was really popular in the 70s. And one of its key lines I remember is, do not compare yourself with others because you will become vain and bitter. Comparing yourselves, particularly if we're looking at other people's lives through social media, like Facebook or things like that. Most people don't report the bad news. They only report the good news. So we can think that everything is Polly perfect, or Peter and Polly perfect, and their lives are more complicated than that. And your life is yours, and comparing yourself to others is going to do nothing to help you live in the moment and manage your life. Some of us have unrealistic expectations of ourselves, those OU perfectionists, and some of it could be generational by our age or our culture. I'm expected to do my parents' elder care if I'm of a certain culture, and the eldest child needs to take care of the parent. But that's a financial strain on me, but there's honor and things like that. So it's an expectation that you're going into bankruptcy over. Certainly, I've had participants explain situations like that to me. Perhaps it's the unrealistic expectation that I can make everything, be the perfect parent and make my child happy 24/7. Michelle Borba in the book Thrivers, that's Borba, Thrivers is like your Thrivers, Thrivers, talks about how having our regulation, our emotional intelligence, how children having that is really important, so they can both weather the realistic expectations and process failures, try again, or decide something's not for them. So they have respect, responsibility, resilience, and resourcefulness. So we can look at expectations. Do I need a perfectly clean house? I don't have that expectation. And anybody who comes to my house would see that, because I'm not willing to have that as a stressor in my life. I'd rather do other things. Certainly fear of failure, success, fear of survival can be very real. In the economic recession of 2008, one very successful consultant who's a friend really realized she needed some help from her EAP. When she kept thinking, she lost clients, business was down, and she was really so afraid that she was really perseverating and imagining. Remember, that's as real to our mind as actually having that trigger experience in the moment. She was imagining that she was going to be living in a box in Central Park in New York and eating the cheese packet with her index finger of, generic macaroni and cheese. So we can have these fears. Once again, fear of failure compared to whom or what. I've even seen this in parents as particularly last year going into the school year, where parents asked me about the rigor in a parenting stress management class. How are children going to get rigor? And I think we can acknowledge that working through school systems and school systems working to educate our children in a really novel way has been a rigorous experience for all of us. So sometimes our rigor is not the acquisition of knowledge, but the acquisition of resilience and resourcefulness. Our outer stress, I mentioned lots of financial things. Money, do we have enough? Do we have enough for food, clothing, shelter? Do we have enough for the expectations or the dreams of what we want going ahead? Some of us with weight, we know we're not eating well, and we need to manage our stress. I think we certainly see that in some of the new successful health and weight management programs. Our stresses, our children, they have expectations. They're influenced by their peers. Certainly COVID has made it so that and we're not done yet with COVID, experiences where children haven't had the experience of peers, appears to learn from socially, as we would expect in middle school and high school, to play with. They may love them, you love them, but children of age equivalents play like children of age equivalents. 4-year-olds play like 4-year-olds, and 14-year-olds play like 14-year-olds. And these friendships, creating a world we may be really sad about. So plenty of other stressors. We've had to move home or take in someone from, one of our family members or friends. These can really be serious outer stressors that are coming and may come and go, or family members deciding with this hot housing market. One friend's going to have all her 4 grandchildren and her daughter and husband move far away from her. She's been with them very close for most of those grandchildren's lives, and her daughter's moving far away because they can live somewhere less expensively and sell their house in Oregon for profit, so she can stay home with her 4 children. So we can have these stresses. Now, we've got 3 different types, three different ways of looking at people here. And by the way, if at any time you want to hit pause, feel free to do that. Go back, see the slides, take some other notes. Feel free to do that. But we know that we're born with our temperaments. We have our experiences of how we were raised, what were value systems, expectations from our specific parents or cultures. Maybe we're really close to a grandmother or grandparent who taught us things, or we've had a great coach who helped us build some skills. And so we can look at these different, sort of be a detective. How are others stressed? Certainly in our home, if you're looking at your children, just look and see if they're tired. Do they have bags under their eyes? And that could be a stress of staying up too late and doing social media and binging, or it could be a stress, I'm really sad, I'm overwhelmed, I'm not sleeping well. You can look in the mirror and see that for yourself as well. But here, let's look at sort of 3 types and do a dive in. You can't always tell person A whether they're stressed. Perhaps he grew up that it's not appropriate for a man to show any emotion. Perhaps it's that the person just really is self-contained, practices yoga a lot, and so can handle the activity of the office, and has a keen sense of themselves, and is grounded. So stress doesn't get them the same way. And so it can be hard to detect this person. Maybe they're just an introvert and not expressive about stress. So they don't go around, I can't do this, big, loud, obvious expressions of stress. But you might notice they go, do you smell that? They might have one little tell if we're looking like a poker player. Then there's person B, maybe the person who does have those proprioception issues. They've got the spillies, they keep dropping their coffee, or folders go across, or someone's having super trouble, who's normally the real tech person, can pull up those Zoom pictures, things like that. Certainly if we're talking about other front-facing individuals. They may be getting sarcastic and bitter, and you may hear that. So their stress may be, say, a burnout stress, and you've seen, kind of feel their sense of humor has shifted, something like that. So this is going to be where your gut, your spider sense, your vagus nerve, and your gut experience is going to really key in that something's not quite right. We also do this with our children, of course. Any great pediatrician that you might go to would tell you, when a parent comes in, usually a mom says she's not herself, he's not herself. Of course, it is your child, and the good pediatricians listen, that the mom's really attuned with their child and knows something's not right. We also do it with our pets too. But person C is the more obvious. The person reacts to stress in conspicuous, so obvious ways. They also may lose their proprioception. They may have all those expressions of sensory overload. Do you smell that? They may be startled. They may be really loud. They also might be super stress eating, so they're gaining weight. What is a normal, you're asking a question of a boss, and they're just like, why are you always bothering me? Sometimes adolescents might appear like person C. They're really enervated, so they yell back at parents. So we can assess, diagnose. Perhaps we're not psychological professionals, but we might observe and feel when others are stressed. I think one of the best protective and proactive things while we're working, and perhaps more of us are going to be in the front-facing citizen serving workspace. Some of us have been, and we may have stress over that challenge. Hey, I was always out there in front with the public. I was doing sanitation. Others of us maybe were in a tax situation and responsible for collecting and processing the taxes for the state. Maybe you were in the office as well, and others of you were at home because you had administrative work that you could do at home, sending out the bills electronically or something like that. We're going to see some conflicts and stress there as we continue to change how we work, and maybe hybrid, everybody back to work, and all the other things that we need to observe. Another person I would say you might want to pay attention to and see whether she can help you or just provoke your thoughts in a healthy way is Priya Parker, Priya, Parker, Parker. She was recently on Brene Brown. If you follow Brene Brown's Dare to Lead podcast, Priya has a lot of her own work and has lots of helpful tips to help with the stress of our changing workspace and how we're going to get together, including how to organize meetings, which, let's face facts, takes a lot of time, and that stresses us out. We'll talk about mindful communication in general, mindfulness, how to be present. Remember, I said our body remembers and can react to an argument or thinking about an argument or a fight or something that stressed us in the past, just as it's happening now, and all our hormonal systems can work accordingly, just as it can get fired and wired and activated by imagining something in the future. Mindfulness, we want to be in the here and now, so we are not borrowing stressors from other times and places, and certainly not creating imagined stressors. We're working and focusing in our real time. Breathing at the very least, as we go along, and as I go through this list, I'm going to be having my hand on my thumb on my belly button, my hand on my abdomen, and I'm going to be breathing in and out slowly. I'm going to slow down my pace of my pitch. Really important to help those stressed citizens that we encounter working for state government. And I'm going to speak slowly, and I'm going to breathe more slowly, and particularly for you women, it lowers your vocal range. If I speak more slowly, I'll have more authority with a lower vocal range. Actors call it dropping in. I'm going to have garner more attention, and my slower pace is and lower voice is going to be less threatening to those who may be really anxious and agitated towards me. And I can just breathe and have a lower register so people can have a better opportunity. They still may not like what I say, but a better opportunity to understand the direction I'm trying to give them as I'm trying to serve them. If you were trained in mediation, and one of the things that I got from my mediation training was this idea of both breathing and checking, having our checkups and checking in with myself. So that's why you need to know your list of where you stockpile, store your first experiences. For some of us, we're aware of our thoughts. We may be aware of dry mouth. Once again, it's that digestion thing. We may be aware of our lower back because our big psoas muscle is locking up and we're uptight that way. So really check in, get to know your body, and know where you put your attention, how it's reacting, so you can say, hey, okay, before this becomes like a really bad back spasm or a neck spasm, something like that, I can take care of myself and do some of the other things that we're talking about. Nutrition, it's summers. Heat is our stressor on our bodies, right? We're not, if we can avoid it, we're not being outside right now in the peak of heat. And so stress, heat affects our thinking capabilities, our coordination, because we sweat more. We need to make sure we have water. And also water-filled food, so that it's perfect. We've got melons and zucchinis and all sorts of natural fruits and vegetables available to us now, corn, so we can eat healthier, fresh, local food. And so we need to look at our nutrition and really just hit pause. Are we emotionally eating? Not. Are we eating fat, salty, and sweet and raising our blood pressure because we're eating really bad food for ourselves? Our friends and family, for those of you who have been in the stress of being at home and that's not been the most psychologically healthy for you because of conflict or codependence, you know, we may be gravitating more to our family of choice. Certainly plenty of people do that over the holiday seasons at the end of the year. And maybe from Labor Day on, you're going to have your families of choice events rather than families of origin. Or maybe you've recognized you're an introvert and you really don't need these big gatherings. Yet we do need some sort of social support to feel safe. It's well researched that being in community keeps us healthy, keeps us engaged, keeps us feeling safe. And if I feel safe, then I don't need to be afraid. So we may need to continue to be in, say, 12-step programs or things like that to support ourselves, or find friends if we're navigating our way through elder care or special education children issues, finding someone. And I think the beauty of COVID is that Zoom is everywhere, FaceTime, Skype, all these things. Most of us have gotten pretty good at those things, Facebook portals, whatever it is, Alexa. We can connect with others through media. And it's not the same as being in the same room or around a fire pit, but it's pretty good. We can distract and deflect. How do you own what's yours and manage yourself and not take in and internalize what is not somebody else's? Do you need to detach with love? Do you need to know how to manage your own body postures and open up and stand relaxed? You know, sort of fake it till you make it, so you can get someone to open up and relax. So in the middle of a conflict, things like that. We certainly can organize ourselves, maybe have less. As much as I said, I don't, you know, spend a huge amount of time housekeeping. I do have things organized, and so I know where things are. And one of the hardest things, the stressors of COVID, was that I changed my workspace, and so it was hard for a while to feel organized when I had my daughter working in this space and I was working in a coat closet. Certainly, we can stop comparing ourselves with others or regulate it. Now, a lot of what I use as stress management tools is that, the therapy is cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm going to change my thinking. I'm going to work on that. And because I love words, even though I'm dyslexic, I'm going to give you some tips here of how to be present and really interrogate, question yourself. Are you living in the present? Are you living in the past? Or you are predicting in the future? And I'm going to start that with this first word, controlling our thoughts. I want to manage my thoughts. All right. So I want to be aware of what I'm thinking, be intentional, have authenticity with myself. Because I think of controlling, let's think of playing tug of war. We're trying to control and pull someone towards us. We get in a lot of conversation battles, communication battles with that model. I think of controlling when I learned to ride a bicycle, a two-wheeler, or I learned to drive, imagine that. Imagine those things. Maybe you have a 16-year-old or a starting driver or starting bicycle rider in your household. Could be any other sport where you grip a handlebar, water skiing, anything. What we find out, and we do intuitively, is we grab the handlebars, we grab the steering wheel really tight. And it's completely unproductive. We actually are tensing all the way up our muscles, or might be gritting our teeth as well. Our heart is usually racing, our palms get sweaty. So we're having that adrenalized cycle happen. And we don't have any more control over the handlebars. In fact, we have less because we overcompensate than we would if we had a nice loose grasp, let some air in, and could respond with subtle feeling. Then we can subtly steer the bicycle. We can relax more, use our body efficiently. If we're skiing of some sort, we can have better control of the car if we're not having sweaty palms. So I want you to think about managing your thoughts. Certainly, this is something that meditators do as well. Your thoughts are going to drift, say in meditation, and then you just pull them back. In the case of meditation, to a neutral place. Try to be blank and breathing. Or if you're meditating and setting an intention, you think about the intention. In that regard, I do want to recommend a book, Into the Magic Shop by James Doty. He's a neurosurgeon who learned how to meditate quite by accident as a poor child, 9-year-old kid in Los Angeles, and he ventured into his favorite magic shop store, and the owner's mother was there and taught this boy at a young age how to meditate and how to set intentions. And it's a great summer read. So if you have about a month before school, read it. It's autobiographical. I think it's fascinating, and it's not super intellectual about things. It's very forthright and candid. So I give you that. That's Into the Magic Shop by James Doty. So we're managing our thoughts. We're managing because we can have this intercept. If I manage my thoughts, cognitive behavior therapy, I can behave differently. Sometimes we can behave differently and then help regulate our thoughts. So we know things like walking and exercise help us. So you can be mindful while you're walking, pay attention to nature, squirrels, sticks, whatever is around you. And we found that kind of mindful presence, being mindful of walking, as opposed to listening to podcasts or talking on the phone with someone while we're walking, or just letting our thoughts ruminate on something. That seniors who did that, people who were over 60, actually had better blood pressure rates, had better cognition, in other words, mental processing, and stayed healthier. And that would be like walking for all of us 3 times a week, 30 or 45 minutes a week. And certainly a lot of people have taken that up for their stress management. And the growing research is just plain old walking is really healthy for us. So we also can take a notice, being mindful of our reactions when we're managing ourselves in real time. Are we raising our voice? Are we starting to speak swifter? Are we leaning in even to the laptop? You know, a lot of times we drive our point home. We try to do this with volume and pace to convince people or sort of skewer people really into our way of thinking. So to do the opposite is to be mindful and to be aware. Are we in our communication, as I would in mediation? Is my content and intent clear? Am I responding to something and having that vagus nerve emotional reaction? Can I see it in someone else having an emotional reaction to what I'm saying? Can I see confusion? Some of our as far as communication challenges have been stressed because we're not in the same room. So the subtle bits of communication we get, say, from a sigh or things like that, aren't present in some of these digital platforms. I'm not going to screen out all negative thoughts. I'm going to manage my thoughts and understand that should stuff invade my mind, my frame of reference, should my paradigm be getting smaller and smaller, I'm going to redirect myself. I'm going to have cues and behaviors so I can focus on opportunity rather than vigilance and negativity. Once again, this is really hard during COVID because we do need to be vigilant and be aware of threats that we can't see because of how contagious COVID is. So we can, Dr. Martin Seligman from the University of Pennsylvania has studied happiness and talks about this a lot about how we can focus on the positive. He has his acronym PERMA, so you can check him out. At the very least, as part of the tool bag and our mindfulness, we can go to bed at night saying what went well, so we have gratitude in our mindset. We can wake up in the morning and really appreciate we had a bed, we had food, we had shelter, whatever you want to appreciate. Set the tone for your day, create that intention so you can be mindful about what you're doing. Experts say, you know, and even an expert like Oprah Winfrey said, you can do it all, you can't do it all at the same time. To stress less, we may decide that there are things we're not willing to do now, especially because the workload on mothers, on caretakers, tends to be toward women. So I'm going to give a shout out to that. But if there's single dads out there or men who, and I have met many who are perhaps in the sandwich, taking care of elder care issues and things like that, beware of spreading yourself too thin. So it is okay to say no. And someone recently chatted in, oh, I tell that to my family. It is okay. And you may need to learn boundary setting to say no. And we can do that, once again, words that I choose to use to manage my stress in such interactions is to say, I'd love to, and rather than but. Replace but with and. You will find that you have continue the connections the community want with people and say no when you need to. So you set those boundaries. Another book, if your stress is with the relationships with people and communication, check out the book Crucial Conversations by Patterson and his group. That's Crucial Conversations. That can really help you break through. It's a small book with lots of really powerful points for personal and professional relationships. Now, some of us by culture and identity and experience have worked really hard or really appreciated by being independent and working alone. It may be really hard for you to ask for help. Start small and get bigger. It may be your paradigm of what a parent is. Parent does all the laundry, does all the food prep. And you got 11 or 12-year-olds, they can certainly help with laundry. Your younger children can help match socks. You can make your life simpler. There's your teenager may be able to help you, or someone else can help you with your IT issues. Someone may be really good at construction. You know, as I said, I had a 29-year-old home. We were competing for bandwidth, and I was capable of drilling a hole from the first floor to the second floor to run Ethernet cable so we could have stable connections. So that was a way to focus on what's important in this time, and I can patch the hole in the wall, but we had to be able to work first. Perfectionism, be very wary of it. You may need to find practices of what's the worst that can happen and be comfortable jumping in. Model yourself after those 4-year-olds. We know it's really unusual for 4-year-olds to really exhibit the stress that we do as adults. They fail all the time. They're learning all the time. They're so authentic. That can mean they ask really awkward questions in really public places, but they also laugh 400 times a day. I just caught myself. I just said, and they laugh 400 times a day. They sleep really well because they are so busy being 100% in their lives of learning and acquiring and growing their minds and bodies without even thinking about it. So really, if you have a 4-year-old near you, I encourage you to stress less by just having some giggles and fun with 4-year-olds and just letting them engage your brain with the questions they ask over and over again. Certainly purposeful movement, whether it's running, walking, yoga, kayaking, our meditation. If you're really short on sleep and being challenged for any number of reasons, 5 minutes of meditation can be the same rest for your mind as 20 minutes of a nap. So learn that practice. You can do it every day. Certainly there's a different impact of meditating every day or twice a day as compared to meditating occasionally. But even I find meditating occasionally, slowing down, breathing, gives my space room. And if you know you're going to have a hectic, stress, concentrated day, really check that out and make that a day where you're really going to spend 5 minutes with some sort of visualization or relaxation. Doing something you enjoy or your win. I don't think it's a coincidence that during COVID we've seen more game playing, doing puzzles, resurgences of crafts and gardening, woodworking, things like that. If you can teach a child to do that or grow an herb garden, the agency involved, the connection of our hands, being away from screens, of doing something with our hands is both developmentally powerful and cognitively and emotionally powerful. And whether we learn the resilience of, oh, well, I tried to grow something and the slugs ate it, that's okay. Your kids have learned science right there. And we'll learn we can plant new seeds and try again. So our experience in the now that we need to connect with our world physically, let kids have a win, and even young kids can grow basil and cook and feed the family. Certainly, I've talked about sleep, getting those devices off out of our room so we keep our melatonin regulation healthy so we can sleep. Melatonin is not gets really disturbed by our devices. Certainly we can tend to sit and be sedentary more than we need to, even in our beds while we're binging. You know, you can stretch and move your body and keep yourself in shape while you're watching something on your laptop, or better yet, take a meditation or yoga class virtually. That has definitely been a benefit of COVID, that there's so many classes we can take, or even a group like Dog Pound, which is a gym in New York and LA, that their Instagram posts give you really inspirational little bits of exercises you could do to change up. And of course, it's free. Journaling can help you see where you're doing victim talk. How do you need to rewrite your experience and just take the red pen like our teachers did to correct our English papers or our history papers? Check out how you're talking to yourself. Are you saying should, always, and never? So real victim speak, or taking, particularly with our families, someone else's judgments and values that aren't valid for us anymore. Journaling certainly will help you regulate your self-talk and really edit practice. Remember, breathing, we need to practice. We need to practice stress management, and we need to practice having really productive self-talk to ourselves. I want you to take, once again, you can hit pause and just think before you stop this, of what works for you, what has worked in the past. Do you have a buddy, someone who can help you practice, mentor, keep you honest on some of the activities that are in our tool bag? So more than this brief hour. We know, you now know what stress is. It's a mind-body thing, really organic experiences. We can acknowledge our responses and change them, de-escalate them with practice, and we know what we can do to manage it. Find what works best for you. Certainly get the automatic habits of breathing better for a start, and walking would be my recommendations as the two places to start. Certainly there are apps too, and so these are some of the apps, and we have plenty of support for all the areas in your life that stress you. Our services are available to you nationally. So for members of your household, anybody who's dependent, living at home, we can help you. And if you're worried about Aunt Elma in Arkansas who broke her hip and you're trying to figure out those elder care issues, give us a call and we can get those elder care referrals for your elders who may not be living with you, but you may be responsible for. Certainly go through the website with your, I think, your 14, 15-year-olds so they can see what's available to them. They may want to, that age, they may want to explore topics by themselves, so that's helpful for them. Certainly you can call us 24/7, and it is free and completely confidential. With that said, I do want you to help me stress less so I can continue to do a really good job for you. Just capture this with your cell phone, and then I can get the feedback I need. Once again, I'm going to thank you and finish on this slide so you can make sure you get the information you need. Also, we're in this pandemic moment together. Feel free to do an informal referral. You hear someone complaining, being stuck, not being well. Just tell them, check out the EAP. There's so much I didn't believe what there was available to help you, and give them a recommendation. Frequently our colleagues and the people we care about at work don't know that they have EAP available. So encourage them, and also let your household members know what's available to them. So if you're really stressed and you forget about it, they can remind you. Stay well and thank you. This is Beth Pollock saying so long.